are Russian forces still pushing in Bakhmut despite the pending Wagner withdrawal? And is Russia's labor shortage on the home front approaching critical levels? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It is May 7th, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. First, as always, guys, you know YouTube loves demonetizing my videos lately. So if you want to support what I do, check out combatvetnews.com. You might even be watching these videos on Combat Vet News because, of course, all my YouTube videos are on here for free. All the news stories on Ukraine and the national security space are here. All the ones I can't get to in the daily update. But if you want to support what I do and get access to uncensored combat footage breakdowns, those are, you want to become a member. Just this Friday, we looked at some crazy sniper POV footage, camera shots from literally down the sniper scope of a thermal sniper operations. And it was wild to see. We definitely learned a lot about how Ukrainian sniper teams operate, and certainly how Russian forces respond. So if you want to do that and help me out, check out combatvetnews.com. Anyway, let's take a look at the front lines. The only big change is, of course, Russian forces, really Wagner forces, continue to advance in Bakhmut, just block by block in a highly systematic fashion. This is, of course, probably reflective of the fact that there's probably some arbitrary line on a map that Wagner wants to reach before they begin to transition operations. There we go. Before they begin to transition their operations to a sort of static defense so that they can conduct what's called a relief in place. And relief in place is exactly what it sounds like. It's when a friendly force comes up and relieves the current unit on the front lines. This is actually a pretty tough operation to do, especially if it's something like Bakhmut, where you're also on the continuous offensive and your enemy, in this case, the Ukrainians, are continually attacking your positions, right? It's very easy to switch out a fighting position when you're not actively fighting. It's a little bit tougher to bring up forces when you're actively under fire. So Wagner's going to have its work cut out for it over the next 3 days as it prepares to transition to Chechen forces. And Chechen forces, it sounds like, didn't get a lot of notice that they were going to be taking over the fighting in Bakhmut. So, you know, it's probably, this usually requires quite a bit more planning than it seems like these forces have done. But this is the nature of war when you're fighting military consists of mutually exclusive competing strongmen. Planning takes a backseat to ego. And I'll be very curious to see how the next 3 days play out. But even more interesting, right? When we look at the combat map, you guys can see Russia launching around 50 attacks in the last 24 hours, focused almost exclusively on Bakhmut. There's another smattering of attacks that are likely spoiling or fixing attacks simply to try to keep Ukrainian forces on their toes. But you can see here again, Russia really wants to see all of Bakhmut get taken before they lose one of their most effective combat units in the form of Wagner. Now, here's where things get kind of interesting. According to the UK Defense Ministry, Russia is facing the worst labor shortage in decades. The Russian central bank surveyed 14,000 employers, found that the number of available employees was at its lowest level since 1998. And, well, this should come as no surprise. The last 3 years have absolutely devastated Russia's labor force. First, of course, you have Russia's already pretty notoriously high really male mortality rate. Russia's male life expectancy is actually quite low. When we look here, you can see relative to some of its peers like the United States and China, these were all actually pretty similar in the the mid 80s. You can see 84 you had Russia and China having roughly equal life expectancies, 67 years on average, the US at 74. And then as time went on, though, many of these other countries improved their public health infrastructure and got access to improved medical technologies. So you could see the United States and China both experiencing increases in life expectancy up till 2019. Russia also experienced an increase, but simply not struggling to catch up. But then in the last 2 years, due to COVID, Russian life expectancy has dropped below, nearly below 70 years, right? China's expectancy, 78, US 77.2, and Russia almost 10% lower, just 71 years old. So this is a country that even at its pre-COVID levels was still almost, around 10% below its development peer countries. It's just a society that's kind of sick. There's a lot of reasons: poverty, pretty pervasive alcohol use disorder, lack of access to healthcare, a lot of issues, right? So you already have sort of a fragile labor force. Then, of course, you have COVID absolutely devastate all of these countries, right? In the United States, shaving off about a year and a half of life expectancy. In Russia, though, it shaved off, again, also about a year and a half of life expectancy. So then it took that hit, and even as it began to recover from the hit that its labor market took due to COVID, which, remember, you have a lot of COVID deaths. Man, I'm going to get demonetized for this for sure. You had a lot of COVID deaths that impacted the labor market. Certainly, those are people that, aren't here in the mortal realm with us. But you also had a lot of people who were maybe already ill but working, and then due to the after effects of COVID, were unable to return to work. We see this in a lot in the U.S., where individuals who maybe would have had another 5 or 6 years of life where they would be physically able to work and wanted to work, were no longer able to, following a severe bout of COVID, right? Due to fatigue and, comorbid infections. COVID increases the likelihood of stroke. So you end up with this labor market that's already, down 2 rounds. And then when most other countries are beginning to recover their labor markets, Russia instead invades Ukraine. And in addition, again, to the fairly high level of casualties, both WIA and KIA that Russia has sustained, you also have to bear in mind that the military recruits people who are young and healthy. So the subset of the Russian population who is most capable of, most able to contribute, at least a subset of the male population who's most able to contribute economically, are the ones who've been scooped up, sent to this war, and then are returned, in many cases, unable to work due to either mental or physical wounds or because they're KIA. You also, of course, have, as they talk about, the extremely low fertility rate in Russia, and in the emigration, the large numbers of again, young, healthy, working age males who have fled the country following the Russian mobilization. So you have, again, not just losing population, but you're losing some of your most economically valuable people, young, healthy men who should be starting their careers. And every year they are outside of Russia establishing new lives increases the likelihood that they won't be going back. And so this, again, isn't going to be a problem this year or next year, but this is one of those decade problems that Russia is going to have to be dealing with. When we talk about the long-term consequences of a war like this, this is sort of what we talk about, right? Obviously in Ukraine, there is the physical destruction, but there's also this demographic destruction that happens. It's literally basically Hemingway's entire writing career was spent profiling the demographic destruction that happens from a highly traumatic war like this. So anyway, guys, guys, that is all I had for you for today. As always, thank you so much to everyone that supports us on combatvetnews.com, especially our lieutenant tier partners. I swear to God, Bing, I will throw this browser off a bus. Thanks to our lieutenant tier members. You guys are the ones who make this whole thing possible. And a special thank you to our Colonel tier members. Again, your support, I couldn't do this without you guys, and everybody that's supporting me at combatvetnews.com. I'll catch you guys in the next one.